Welcome to Lost in Thoughts, a space for stories, reflections, and life's absurdities. Who am I? Well, I'm someone like you, navigating this wild world, often getting a little lost along the way. But maybe, just maybe, getting lost is how we find what matters most. So sit back, relax, and let's explore this beautiful mess together. So there seems to be a growing epidemic, and this epidemic is loneliness. There are elderly women in Japan who have chosen a life of crime in order to go to jail to feel connected to people. Some have money, but they have no community. And instead of living alone, all by themselves, they do some kind of small crime, stealing or what have you. They go to jail, they get fed 3 square meals a day, they have their own room, they have shelter, they're told when to get up, when to go to sleep, all those things. They eat alone, but there is some time for them to kind of socialize amongst other inmates that are around their age. And it seems to be, at least the question is, why? Why are these women doing this? Why are they, how did they get to this position? I understand if you're at that age, you have no friends or your friends have all died out, unfortunately. You want a sense of community, this is what you do. I did watch an episode on Netflix. They were talking about blue zones. And one aspect was a group of women in Japan who, instead of living separately, they ended up kind of congregating together as like roommates, kind of hanging out. So be like one big house, maybe like 8 rooms or whatever, and each person would kind of hang out and they would just do things together. So it's like they have this sense of community versus just idly living alone. And a lot of times in some of these cases, especially the ones with women going to jail, their kids don't want to take care of them in some cases. And maybe in some other cases, the kids, they don't have kids, or their kids have died before they have. But it's very interesting, and also Japan's population is declining. So they have a big thing coming up. I believe for a while they were doing like the one kid per family type deal. I think it was them, or maybe it was China, I'm not sure. But I've been to Japan a couple times, and it's heavily populated, but there's something that's coming out. Now the interesting thing is, I'm curious to see, because that culture is so different than US culture. I mean, they're so efficient with their train systems, their timing. Most people there are very well dressed, they're very fit, both men and women. A lot of people commute, take the train, all these things. It's just a whole different vibe. If you ever get a chance to go, definitely go and check it out. But it's a different vibe, and I'm curious to see if they are ahead of the curve for what could happen to the US as far as being lonely. I know right now there's talks of young men who aren't even having any sex, are not dating, kind of going their own way and kind of just isolating away from what the dating life is right now. I think there's, dating app fatigue, and I think there is a growing population that probably doesn't know how to intermingle and communicate with each other, where back in the days, before the apps, before internet, you had to make moves because there was no possibility of you being aware of a woman or a partner that you would be attracted to who lives one city down, 2 cities down, or even, another state or another country. It's impossible. Unless you traveled there yourself, you wouldn't know. So, damn, I kind of lost my thought. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of see where that kind of leads to. So, the other aspect, which is kind of almost in the same vein, is these female robots, let's say. I don't know if you want to call it sex robots, but they're building those too. But these companions, AI companions, kind of gets into the idea of the Matrix, right? Where if the need to fulfill loneliness, if a virtual version of that satisfies you, do you really care for the real thing, right? And here's an example of that. There is a Twilight Zone episode, which I love Twilight Zone episode, where a prisoner is on, let's say he's on Mars, and he's the only prisoner on Mars, at least maybe he's within 500 miles. He's the only prisoner on Mars, and it was some kind of program they created, and I forgot what exactly he did. Maybe he killed somebody, and he's isolated up there by himself, where he can't bother anyone, he can't hurt anyone, he's just alone. And from time to time, maybe every 6 months or maybe once a year, they drop off a shipment of supplies so that he, has food and whatever, things he needs to survive. And the guy stops by, and he usually maybe chats them up for 5 minutes, maybe it's an hour, depending on how much time he has before he has to leave. And the guy really, really desires that, like the companionship of talking to someone who's real, to the point, where he really, these are like Christmas days, and I think when the last time the guy came, the guy had like, a whole chessboard and wanted to play the game, just to maximize the amount of time together. And I think at this point, he couldn't stay. But instead, he brought something. He brought a robot. A AI robot. She looked human. If you just observed her, everything about her, even her looks, how she dressed, her demeanor, all of it, if you just saw them together, you would not think she's a robot. But when you start hearing her talk, and she's still learning things about him, but she talks, and in the beginning, he hates her, doesn't like her at all. He just stay away from me, get away from me, leave, get out of here. You're not real, blah, blah, blah. But then that loneliness kicks in. And I think she starts to cry and become emotional. And that, that's like a gut punch to some guys. Most guys, when you have a beautiful, attractive woman and she's trying to please you and you reject her and she gets emotional. So that kind of softens him up and he starts to slowly forget that she's a robot, to the point where a few years go by and he sees her as his companion, talks to her, hangs out with her. The veneer of her being a robot fades away and that line gets blurred to the point where he treats her exactly like a human. And you don't really know it, or you kind of know it, but when it really hits is when the time comes when government changes and they eliminate this prisoner on another planet program, and so they're bringing him back home to Earth. And he's all excited. He's like, yeah, we need to go back, or we get to go and all that stuff. And like, we only got space for you. She cannot come. And he gets emotional and irate and all that stuff, and because it's like, he's leaving his significant other, his wife, or his common law wife, because they never got married, but it's like he's leaving someone very important to him behind, as if she was real. But for the years that they were together, she was real to him. And that's kind of where it is. And it didn't really hit that she's not real. I think she stumbled and fall, and she, you started to see her parts, flicker, and that kind of hit him there, because they just didn't have the weight to bring her. But he was emotional about it. And to go from, get out of here, I don't trust you, I don't like you, to, almost to the point where he's like, we're not going to go. I'm not going to go if she can't go with me. So that's kind of where, these companionship robots are going. To the point, if you have men, women who are super lonely and their only option is jail or a companion robot, I think some people are going to try that companion robot. And if after a point in time you can't tell, that the lines are going to get blurred, I think. And it'll be interesting to see. But then at that point, what are real relationships? How does that happen? How do we populate? If you're a middle-aged man and you order a robot, AI robot, who you choose your specs, height, built, size, color, eye color, style, everything, and she starts to connect with you on many different levels. She listens to you, to your emotional stuff. When you're being vocal about something, she doesn't care if you have the corniest hobbies or the coolest hobbies. She's all supportive no matter what it is that you're into. And you're not arguing with her. maybe in the beginning because you guys are trying to figure it out, but as far as she's not arguing with you, that, and then you have a real person who, has their own ideas of what they want out of life, which is perfectly fine, but there's going to be more combativeness, and even great relationships take work, and these robots may not require little to any work. How do you procreate at that point? Would you procreate at that point? Is there a desire for it? Whether you're a man or a woman. So it's fascinating to see where things may go. There's quite a few movies about it. I mean, the movie Her, where with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, he didn't even see her. She didn't even have a body. He fell in love with her. And she was having like thousands of relationships with so many different people and AI robots and all that stuff. She was able to multitask and all that, like everything. But he fell in love with just her voice and her connection to him. Imagine putting a body to that. Or if it's her body, let's say it is, that's who it is. But it's AI robot. Curious. And then the other part is you leave yourself vulnerable to something that could glitch on you. That's the other crazy part, right? It's like, you get to the point where you're like, man, I think she's the one, even though she's an AI robot, I don't care, or whatever. I'm telling her my deepest, darkest secrets, and she doesn't really complain or trip about all that stuff, or, think twice about me, or think less of me for who I used to be or how I am. And she's helping me become a better person, and I'm cool. I don't need this. I don't need to date. I don't need to see anybody. And then there's like a crazy update that doesn't work quite well, or it's off, or you gotta sleep, and this robot sleeping next to you, and there's a glitch or whatever. I don't know. It's like there might be some people who don't wake up. AI is like there's no soul in them, so you can't treat them like they're all innocent. You still gotta think like they're people. There's some good, some bad, and some days have some good days, some bad days, and you still gotta be on guard. But yeah, a lot of people are gonna have their guards down. Interesting times. We are living in interesting times. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lost in Thoughts. I am grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.